Hi everybody. We are facing today another choice between two options. One being only being able to tell painful truths, only being able to tell merciful lies. I find this to be quite a complicated choice because it can have serious consequences on relationships with others. So let's discuss first of all only being able to tell painful truths. I think truth is like medicine. Sometimes it's bitter, but necessary. Let me tell you an uncomfortable story. One of those things that people usually don't feel comfortable saying. But I'll say it anyway because it's the pure truth of what actually happened. And it serves, I think, to illustrate the issue in a clear way that I think everyone can recognize themselves in. Once, it must be, I don't know, 15 years ago, more or less, give or take, I was working for this company with about a dozen employees. There was this girl, I frankly don't remember her name, who, it's embarrassing even to say it, gave off an odor of sweat from her armpits. She washed, don't get me wrong, I'm convinced of that, but she didn't use, creams, anti-odor lotions and stuff like that. We had a manager who happened to be the boss's wife, who at one point started putting those scent diffusers all over the place, all over the office. Possibly, I thought at the time, as a way to hint at the problem and maybe prompt the person concerned to take some action. But the girl didn't catch on, and nothing was done. Then one day, the inevitable happened. Right after the busiest part of the year was over, the girl got fired. Like that. Not that she had done anything wrong. And sure, there might have been a simpler and more traditional explanation for the firing, but the doubt still lingers in my mind. The conclusion is that certain things can't be said. At best, you can make someone understand by hinting at the problem without directly expressing it. You have to figure it out yourself. You have to pick up the signals, so to speak. Otherwise, you end up abandoned or fired, and maybe you'll never even know why. I know that later she was hired somewhere else, but who knows if she ever figured out the inconvenient truth. So often, truths are uncomfortable, but they need to be said nonetheless because they can save people. And if you don't have the courage to say them, at least you can make them understood without being rude or too direct. Then it's up to the person's intelligence to read between the lines, so to speak. But small truths don't always need to be said if the matter ends there and there's no consequences. Small lies can even be courtesies in order to preserve social relationships and bonds with the people who matter to us. In this case, insisting on always telling the truth turns into a fetish that does more harm than good to the person in question. Like the example of the girlfriend's new dress. There's no harm in lying. In fact, the advantages are clear, and that would be the integrity of the relationship. You do need to be careful, though, that the imperative to protect relationships doesn't lead to building them on a network of lies. In the end, lying can become a habit, and you risk avoiding the truth, even about important things, the kind that can make resentments and grudges faster and eventually ruin a relationship. Because you see, even small things can accumulate weight. It's one thing if, say, the husband leaves the towel in the wrong place once in a while, but if he also leaves the toilet seat up, burps at the table continuously, makes his wife fill the car with gas most of the time, and the list can go on, then being afraid of saying the truth can slowly but inexorably wear down the relationship. Like a wave constantly battering the coast until it's consumed. So in conclusion, you gotta have the intelligence to distinguish between the truths that must be said and those that can be left unsaid. Now let's examine the option only being able to tell merciful lies. What I mean by merciful lies are the lies that are told, let's say, so as not to hurt people unnecessarily. And one might even ask whether those who always tell the truth and brag about it are not in fact using uncompromised honesty as an excuse to wound others. And sure enough, everybody has their vulnerabilities that they don't want to be exposed. So we are all on the same boat here. However, a word of warning: reality is complicated. Sometimes it's necessary to hurt people and force them to face an uncomfortable truth to make them come to their senses and prevent them from continuing down a harmful, counterproductive path. Take the psychoanalyst, for instance. What does he do? He puts you face to face with a trauma you suffered as a child. Let's say, God forbid, sexual violence, a trauma that your unconscious has spent years trying to push into oblivion in the name of living a quiet life. The problem is that sweeping the dirt under the rug gives only temporary relief, or rather the illusion of relief. The less you face reality, the more it makes itself felt. Facing it is always the right recipe, and the first step to facing reality is to become aware of it by speaking it aloud. Truth is nothing other than the verbalization of reality. It's basically saying reality out loud. The price to be paid by someone who hides the truth about themselves to themselves can be very high. Think of someone who lives in an abusive relationship with a woman who takes advantage of his infatuation to drain him financially and emotionally. You ever heard of that? A true friend can only confront a man like that with the fate that awaits him if he keeps going down that slippery slope. Not doing so and instead indulging his delusion, telling me that it's only a matter of time before she loves him back and marries him and have 5 children with you, and blah blah blah. That is the shortest road to total ruin. It's a bit like those parents who indulge their children in everything, fulfilling their every desire under the illusion that giving them everything is the way to make them happy. Tragic error in perspective. So merciful lies can be useful or even necessary. Let's say to avoid arguing with your girlfriend, you tell her that her new dress looks nice even if you think it's awful, or similar things, but very damaging for pretty much everything else. Lies should be used very sparingly. And by the way, you're no expert in dressing, so at least give your girlfriend the benefit of the doubt. So what would my choice be in conclusion? Because it's time to get to a conclusion. Ideally both, depending on the circumstances. But if I had to choose, and this game is all about choice, I choose painful truths. The consequences of not telling the truth can be much more serious than the consequences of hitting somebody in the head with inconvenient truths. Because human beings tend to delude themselves, to rationalize their impulses, especially the self-destructive ones. And if we widen the scope to politics and society, something that I don't intend to do too much in this channel, at least for the time being, we can rightfully say that merciful lies have brought the West and the Western civilization to disaster. And those with ears to hear, let them hear. So in conclusion, merciful lies are fine if it's about not hurting people unnecessarily. Thus not damaging a relationship just for the sake of an ideological attachment to some idea of purity, unconditional honesty, and whatever flag you want to wave. But beware of basing relationships on lies, because that never ends well. Truth should always be preferred, even when it risks hurting people, if it's done for their own good, to save them from themselves or from the malign, hurtful influence of others. Truth that matters makes you free. There is no freedom outside truth. Without truth, there is only the slavery of ignorance. With all that being said, I go ahead and make my choice. Let's see if the wider public is on my side. Not that it really matters. And my choice is the black one. Only being able to tell painful truths. Only being able to tell merciful lies gets 75, against 25. That is the widest gap that we have encountered so far for any of the dilemmas that we have faced. Interesting? Interesting. And don't fail to tell us which one you would have chosen and the reason why. Next dilemma, as anticipation of the content of the next video, is between having a high-paying job you hate or having a low-paying job you love. Okay, we'll discuss this one in the next video. In the meantime, I wish you a wonderful day and I thank you for your attention. Bye bye.